Hey, welcome back to Zen Mind Peaceful Life, your sanctuary for self-discovery, growth, and understanding in a world that's often anything but calm. Now, let's get real for a second. Have you ever been in a relationship with someone who seemed to have the power to break your heart, but somehow, they walked away without a second thought? If you've ever crossed paths with an Aries, you probably know exactly what I'm talking about. They're passionate, bold, and intense. But also, let's face it, they can leave you shattered while barely blinking an eye. So, why is it that Aries can break you, and feel absolutely nothing in the process? Is it just their fiery personality? Or is there more beneath the surface? In today's video, we're diving into the 15 reasons why an Aries can make you feel like you've been hit by a storm and left in the dust. But it's not all bad. We're going to explore these traits from an astrological perspective, and even dive into some psychology to help you understand why they do what they do. Trust me, you're going to want to stick around for the entire video because I'm going to share some tips on how you can use this knowledge to protect your peace, keep your heart intact, and navigate relationships with an Aries the right way. If you haven't already, make sure to subscribe, hit the like button, and share this video with someone who's been caught up in the whirlwind of an Aries. You won't want to miss this, so let's dive in. The thrill of an Aries is undeniable. When they walk into a room, there's an energy that makes everything feel a little more alive. They're fiery, ambitious, and unapologetically themselves. But what happens when that energy comes crashing into your world, and you end up feeling a little broken? It's not easy being involved with an Aries, especially if you're someone who values stability and deep emotional connection. These passionate souls aren't intentionally cruel or heartless, but their nature has a way of making you feel like you're always chasing after something that can't quite be caught. So, what's behind this behavior? Let's dive into the first 5 reasons why Aries will break you and feel nothing on the other side. Aries is one of the most independent signs of the zodiac. Their need for autonomy is as natural as breathing. Imagine being in a relationship where, no matter how close you get, they always feel like they're just out of reach. You might think you're building something together, but to them, it's always about making sure they don't lose themselves in the process. I remember a friend, Emily, who was dating an Aries man, Daniel. In the beginning, he seemed like everything she wanted, charismatic, bold, and confident. But the more they spent time together, the more Emily felt like she was clinging to a shadow. Daniel would often make plans, but he would cancel them last minute, telling her he needed his space. It wasn't that he didn't care for her, it was simply that he valued his independence more than anything. In the end, Emily found herself always waiting, always adjusting to his needs, while his were rarely compromised. He didn't intentionally break her heart, but his desire for freedom left her feeling emotionally abandoned. If you're in a relationship with an Aries, it's essential to remember that their independence isn't about you, it's about their own sense of identity. The best way to handle this is by embracing your own independence as well. Aries is attracted to strength and self-sufficiency, so rather than clinging to them or seeking constant validation, take time to nurture your own passions, hobbies, and personal goals. Show them that you can stand on your own 2 feet, and they'll respect you more for it. Then there's the thrilling chase, the rush of being pursued by an Aries. When they're interested in you, they'll go all out, bold texts, spontaneous plans, and that unmistakable spark. But once they've won you over, the excitement fades, and the chase is over. The intensity drops, and what was once a burning flame might suddenly feel more like a dying ember. This can be absolutely confusing if you're not prepared for it. Take Sarah's experience, for instance. She met Alex, an Aries, through mutual friends, and their connection was instant. He would call her every day, send her spontaneous gifts, and sweep her off her feet with grand gestures. But after a few months of dating, Alex started pulling back. He didn't ghost her, but his attention waned. He stopped texting her as much and began focusing more on his career and personal projects. Sarah was left wondering if she had done something wrong. What happened to the passionate Aries who had once showered her with affection? In truth, Alex's excitement was never really about Sarah. It was about the thrill of winning. Once he had her, he needed something else to ignite that passion. If you're with an Aries, realize that their affection is often tied to the thrill of conquest. Once they feel like they've got you, their energy might shift. To cope, try to keep the relationship dynamic fresh by introducing new activities, challenges, and adventures. Keep the chase alive in a way that doesn't make you feel like a prize to be won, but rather a partner on an exciting journey together. Aries are famous for their bluntness. They don't have time for sugarcoating. And they don't hesitate to speak their mind. On one hand, this honesty can be refreshing, it's direct, it's clear, and it's real. But on the other hand, when it's not tempered with empathy, it can hurt. Aries don't always consider the emotional impact of their words because they're more focused on being honest and true to themselves. I once spoke with a woman, Nina, who had dated an Aries a few years back. Their breakup was anything but gentle. He had told her, straight up, that she was too needy and lacked ambition. These words hit Nina like a ton of bricks. She was left feeling like there was something fundamentally wrong with her, but he simply shrugged it off. I just said what I thought, he had explained, without much care for how deeply those words had wounded her. It's a harsh reality when you realize that Aries sometimes forget that their words are weapons. If you're dealing with an Aries, know that their bluntness isn't meant to attack you personally, it's just the way they express themselves. When their honesty stings, take a step back and remind yourself that their intention is rarely to hurt. You can't change their directness, but you can choose how to respond. Don't take their words to heart unless they come from a place of genuine care. If they cut deep, take the time to reflect, but don't let it define your self-worth. Then there's the emotional detachment, which might be one of the most confusing traits of an Aries. You could be in the middle of an intense conversation about your relationship, and suddenly, they're checked out. It's as if they've put up an invisible wall, and they're no longer emotionally present. To an Aries, deep emotional connections are hard to navigate. They value their independence so much that they often shy away from vulnerability, even in a relationship. One of my clients, Laura, shared that she had been dating an Aries man who had a habit of shutting down whenever things got too emotionally intense. He would literally stop responding during serious conversations and retreat into himself. She couldn't understand why he would disappear emotionally after weeks of passionate connection. It wasn't that he didn't care, it was that he wasn't equipped to handle that level of vulnerability. To him, emotional depth felt like a trap, a loss of his freedom. If you're with an Aries and find yourself feeling emotionally neglected, remember that their detachment is not about you, it's about them. Aries often struggle to reconcile their fierce independence with the intimacy of a relationship. The best way to deal with this is by giving them space when needed, but also setting clear boundaries for emotional availability. Express your needs calmly and patiently, letting them know that while you respect their need for space, you also need emotional closeness to feel valued. It might take time, but slowly, they'll learn to open up more. Lastly, there's Aries' quick temper. It's like the flick of a switch. 1 minute, everything is fine, and the next, an argument erupts out of nowhere. Aries tends to react first, think later. Their anger comes in a burst, but it's also fleeting. After a storm of words, they might act like nothing happened. For someone who is used to processing emotions more deeply, this can leave you feeling whiplashed and confused. Take the story of Tim, a guy who had been with an Aries for over a year. One evening, they had a small disagreement about a weekend plan. What seemed like a minor issue escalated into a full-blown argument. Tim was stunned by how quickly things went from 0 to 60. He was still processing the fight when his Aries partner suddenly switched gears, saying, "Okay, I'm over it, let's move on." For Tim, it was like nothing had been resolved, and the emotional fallout lingered long after. If you find yourself in a similar situation, remember that Aries tempers burn hot and fast, but they usually fizzle out just as quickly. They don't like to dwell on things, so it's essential to communicate calmly after the storm passes. Don't take their outbursts personally, they're often just an emotional release, not a reflection of their true feelings. Practice patience, and give them space to cool down before attempting to talk things through. The unpredictable nature of Aries is one of the most captivating things about them, but it can also be one of the most exhausting. Their impulsive decisions, driven by their fiery instinct, often leave you spinning in the aftermath. One minute, they're full of passion and excitement, ready to take on the world with you by their side. The next, they've made a dramatic shift in direction, leaving you feeling confused. And sometimes, a little hurt. It was only a few months ago when I spoke to Kate, a woman who'd been in a whirlwind romance with an Aries man named Mark. She vividly remembered their spontaneous trip to Paris, just a week into their relationship. The rush of it all, the excitement of a last-minute adventure, was everything she had ever dreamed of. But then, a few weeks later, Mark made an impulsive decision to move across the country for a job opportunity without consulting her. It was classic Aries, impulsive, unpredictable, and thrilling at first, but ultimately leaving Kate to wonder if she was even part of the plan. For Aries, it's all about acting in the moment. Their need for spontaneity is often a double-edged sword. When you're with them, you're constantly riding that wave of excitement, but you also need to be prepared for it to crash unexpectedly. The key to handling this is learning to embrace the unpredictability without tying your sense of self-worth to their whims. Instead of trying to control their impulses, focus on embracing your own. Let them know that while you're happy to join them on their spontaneous journeys, you also have your own path to follow. Keep your own projects, hobbies, and goals alive so that their unpredictability doesn't cause you to lose your balance. This brings us to another trait that can really test a relationship with an Aries: their need for constant action. Aries is ruled by Mars, the planet of war, and they carry that energy with them in every aspect of their lives. When they're not conquering one goal, they're chasing the next, often without stopping to catch their breath. It's like living with someone who always has to be doing something, always striving for more. This boundless energy can be thrilling, but it can also leave you feeling like you're stuck in a perpetual race with no finish line in sight. I remember speaking to Mia, a woman who had been dating an Aries for over a year. While they shared many great moments together, Mia found herself getting frustrated by his relentless need for action. On weekends, instead of enjoying quiet time together, he'd drag her into another adventure, climbing mountains, running marathons, even taking up a new sport just for the thrill of it. Mia loved the excitement at first, but eventually, she began to feel emotionally drained. She didn't need to run a race every weekend. What she craved was more peaceful moments, time to relax, and simply be with him. If you find yourself feeling overwhelmed by an Aries' constant desire to act, it's important to communicate your needs calmly. Let them know you appreciate their energy but need some time to recharge. The key is balance, keeping the excitement alive without burning yourself out. Aries will respect you more if you show that you can keep up with their energy, but also know when to slow down and take a breather. Now, the next trait that can leave you feeling emotionally exhausted in a relationship with an Aries is their complete intolerance for being controlled. If you try to put boundaries on them, or worse, try to restrict their freedom, you might as well be throwing a spark into dry tinder. Aries will erupt. Their independent spirit makes them fiercely resistant to any form of control or limitation. And they will fight back with all the energy they have. David, a close friend of mine, had been in a serious relationship with an Aries woman named Laura. Everything seemed perfect, until Laura started getting serious about their future. She began subtly putting pressure on David to make decisions about their long-term plans, asking him when they would move in together, or discussing marriage in passing. David, who was someone who liked to take his time, felt stifled. He tried to back away from the conversations, but Laura pushed harder. Eventually, David pulled away, feeling like he was being cornered. For Laura, it was about making sure they were on the same path, but for David, it felt like losing his autonomy. If you're with an Aries and they start to feel controlled, you'll notice the shift. They'll pull away, become distant, or even outright rebel. The best advice here is to respect their need for freedom. Aries values their independence above all else, so try not to make them feel trapped in the relationship. This doesn't mean you shouldn't express your needs, it just means you have to find a way to do so without making them feel like they're losing their sense of self. Create room for open communication, but give them the space they need to feel free. The bluntness of an Aries can often feel like a cold splash of water when you least expect it. Aries is known for its raw honesty. And while some appreciate this transparency, others are left reeling from the harshness of their words. When an Aries tells you exactly what they think, they don't mince words. They don't hesitate to point out your flaws, your mistakes, or any area where they feel you're lacking. While this can be incredibly refreshing at times, it can also be deeply painful. Clara, a colleague of mine, learned this lesson the hard way. She had been working with an Aries manager, and one day, during a meeting, she presented a project she was really proud of. Her manager's feedback was direct and brutal. "This isn't what I expected from you." "It's sloppy," he said without hesitation. Clara was taken aback. She had worked tirelessly on that project and felt crushed by the blunt criticism. What stung even more was that her manager didn't offer any encouragement, just raw, unfiltered feedback. For those who are sensitive to criticism, dealing with Aries' bluntness can be a challenge. But here's the thing, Aries' directness isn't personal, even if it feels like it is. They are more focused on getting to the truth, rather than considering the emotional fallout. If you find yourself on the receiving end of their unfiltered thoughts, try not to take it too personally. Yes, it can sting, but remember that it's often not about you, it's about their need to be honest. The best way to handle this is by acknowledging their feedback, and then moving on. Don't let their words define your self-worth. And if their bluntness feels too harsh, don't be afraid to express how it affects you. Aries are open to criticism, they just don't always know how it feels to be on the other end. Then, there's the thing that many don't expect from an Aries, their difficulty with vulnerability. You might assume that such a bold and fearless sign would have no problem opening up emotionally, but that's far from the case. Aries can struggle with letting their guard down, often fearing that showing vulnerability will make them weak or dependent. For them, being emotionally open is a risk they're unwilling to take, which can create a sense of emotional distance in relationships. A friend of mine, Lily, was dating an Aries named Ben. They had been together for several months, but every time things started to get emotionally intense, Ben would retreat. Lily would ask him how he was feeling, or if he was worried about something, and he'd always deflect. "I'm fine," he'd say, or change the subject entirely. Lily was left wondering if he was truly invested in the relationship or just keeping her at arm's length. Ben cared about her, but he couldn't bring himself to express it. Vulnerability felt like a threat to his autonomy. If you're in a relationship with an Aries, it's important to recognize that their emotional distance isn't a reflection of their feelings for you, it's a defense mechanism. They may not be able to open up easily, but that doesn't mean they don't care. Be patient and don't push them to reveal more than they're ready to share. Instead, create an environment where they feel safe enough to express their emotions, even if it's just a little bit at a time. There's an undeniable thrill that comes with being involved with an Aries. Their energy, their enthusiasm, their fire, it's magnetic. But when things start to shift, when their passion cools, or when they retreat, it's like being left in a whirlwind. One moment, everything is hot and heavy, and the next, it's all gone. The Aries' tendency to move on quickly, without hesitation, can feel like a punch to the gut. This is not out of malice, but because they thrive in the moment, not in the past. The chase is what excites them, the challenge is what fuels their fire. Take Olivia, for example. She had been seeing Jordan, an Aries, for several months. They had a passionate, intense relationship, filled with spontaneity and adventure. At first, Olivia was swept off her feet. There were surprises, romantic getaways, and non-stop fun. But once Jordan had her heart, the spark began to fade. Suddenly, his focus shifted. He began spending more time with his friends, pursuing new goals, and diving deeper into his work. Olivia couldn't understand what had changed. What happened to the man who seemed so focused on her just weeks before? She felt abandoned, emotionally drained, and confused. It took Olivia a while to realize that for Aries, once the challenge is over, they need something else to reignite their passion. Aries thrive on the initial excitement, and once they feel they've won, they often turn their attention elsewhere. If you're in a relationship with an Aries, it's crucial to understand this pattern and not take it personally. Their shifting focus isn't a sign of disinterest or a lack of care, it's just how their energy works. The best advice here is to make sure you continue to bring new challenges and excitement into the relationship. Keep things fresh by engaging in new activities together, or by exploring something neither of you has tried before. That sense of novelty will keep the fire burning. But remember, you can't chase after them to keep their interest. You have to find your own balance between being present and giving them the space they need to feel stimulated. One of the most frustrating aspects of dealing with an Aries is their intense need for action. Aries is a sign ruled by Mars, the planet of war and action. This means they're always in motion, always striving for the next big thing, and rarely satisfied with where they are. There's always a sense of urgency in their lives, always a goal to be reached, a challenge to be conquered. And while that drive is inspiring, it can also make it hard to find peace or stability in a relationship with an Aries. I remember talking to Sophie, who had been dating an Aries man named Nick for nearly a year. Sophie was a quiet, introspective person who loved to spend her weekends reading or visiting local parks for some quiet reflection. But Nick? He was always on the go. Whether it was signing up for a new fitness challenge, starting a new business venture, or taking spontaneous trips, Nick was always in motion. At first, Sophie admired his energy, but soon, it became overwhelming. Nick's need to always be doing something left little room for relaxation or downtime. Sophie started feeling drained, as if she was constantly being pulled in a million directions. If you find yourself in a similar situation with an Aries, it's important to remember that their constant need for action is not a reflection of their feelings for you. It's just who they are. They're driven by ambition, but that doesn't mean they don't care about you. In fact, they often express their love through action. However, for someone who values peace and quiet, this can be difficult to navigate. The best advice here is to communicate your need for balance. Let your Aries partner know how important it is for you to have moments of calm. And don't be afraid to take time for yourself. It's essential to find that middle ground, where their energy can complement your need for peace, without one overpowering the other. Aries is a fire sign, and like all fire signs, they have a temperament that can flare up in an instant. If you've ever found yourself in a heated argument with an Aries, you know exactly how quickly things can escalate. The thing about Aries is that they are quick to react, often before they fully process their emotions. A small disagreement can quickly turn into an emotional outburst, leaving both partners feeling raw and unbalanced. Take the story of Kevin and Mia. They had been dating for 6 months when one evening, a simple miscommunication about plans for the weekend turned into a full-blown argument. Mia had forgotten to mention a small detail about the trip, and Kevin, feeling hurt and neglected, snapped. His reaction was quick, intense, and full of emotion. Mia, who preferred to talk things through calmly, was stunned by his outburst. Kevin's temper flared, and just as quickly, it was over. He apologized a few minutes later, as if nothing had happened. Mia, however, was left feeling unsettled, unsure of how to process the situation. For Aries, emotional outbursts aren't usually as intense or lasting as they seem. What you see in the moment is often the full expression of their emotions. but it doesn't necessarily carry the weight it might carry for you. Aries have a tendency to quickly move on from confrontations, whereas others may find themselves replaying the argument over and over. If you're in a relationship with an Aries, understanding this can help you navigate their temper. When things get heated, it's important not to take things personally. Their anger is usually short-lived. And if you can give them space to cool down, they'll often return to the situation with a clear mind. The key here is to avoid matching their intensity, let them blow off steam and then approach the conversation with calm and understanding. If you've ever been in a relationship with an Aries, you know that they're anything but passive. They're not the type to sit back and let life happen to them. Aries thrives on taking the initiative, whether in their career, their personal goals, or in love. But what happens when their desire for control and independence clashes with your own needs? I recently spoke with Sarah, a woman who had been in a long-term relationship with an Aries. Sarah and Adam had always had a fiery dynamic, but as their relationship progressed, she found herself constantly trying to keep up with Adam's constant push for more. Adam was always looking for new opportunities, new experiences, new ways to challenge himself. While Sarah admired his drive, she often felt like she was left in his wake. It wasn't that Adam didn't love her, he did, but his need to constantly be in control of his life and his future sometimes overshadowed her needs. She began to feel like she was playing a supporting role in his life rather than a partner. In relationships with Aries, it's important to understand that they have a deep need for independence and control. This isn't about rejecting you, but about ensuring they don't lose their own sense of self. If you find yourself feeling overlooked, it's essential to communicate openly about your needs. Aries can sometimes be so focused on their goals that they forget to consider the emotional needs of their partner. The best advice here is to maintain your own sense of independence. Don't lose yourself in the relationship, and make sure your voice is heard. Aries respects strength and autonomy, so showing them that you can stand on your own will only make the relationship stronger. As we reach the final point in our deep dive into the Aries personality, we're left with a key realization: Aries don't look back. Once they've moved on, it's as if the past never existed. This trait can be particularly hard to navigate in relationships because, while you're still processing everything, they're already looking ahead. They don't dwell on past mistakes, regrets, or even old connections. This ability to detach so quickly may feel cold, and it can leave you feeling as if all the emotions you shared together were just forgotten the moment the relationship ended. Take the case of Alex and Rachel. Alex, an Aries, had been in a relationship with Rachel for 2 years. They had shared countless memories, vacations, and milestones together. But when Alex decided that it was time to move on, he did so without much warning. Rachel, who had hoped they could work through their issues, was left feeling lost. She tried to reach out, hoping for closure, but Alex had already moved on to a new phase of his life. For him, there was no lingering attachment to the past. He wasn't cold-hearted, but he just didn't have the capacity to dwell on what was behind him. It's important to recognize that this is not a reflection of how much Aries cares for you, it's just their way of processing life. They're constantly moving forward, focused on the future, and unable to let themselves get bogged down by past emotions. If you've been left behind, it can feel incredibly frustrating and painful. You may be stuck trying to piece together what went wrong. And Aries has already moved on to the next chapter. The best way to handle this is to accept it for what it is. If you're in a relationship with an Aries and the dynamic starts to change, be prepared for the possibility that they may move on quickly, and don't take it personally. Aries' drive and ambition often mean they're always focused on what's ahead, and if that means leaving a relationship behind, they'll do so without hesitation. The key is to focus on your own healing. Don't chase after them for closure, and don't allow their need for emotional detachment to define how you move forward. Instead, allow yourself the time and space to heal, and remember that closure comes from within, not from the other person. So, what do you do when you're left with the aftermath of an Aries relationship, feeling emotionally drained, confused, or hurt by their behavior? The truth is, navigating a relationship with an Aries requires deep self-awareness, understanding of their intense nature, and most importantly, a strong sense of your own identity. Here's the thing: Aries are amazing, passionate, energetic people who can bring an exciting spark into your life. They're ruled by Mars, the planet of action and energy, which means they live life with an intensity that's hard to match. Their love is fiery, bold, and can light up your world. But with that same fire comes the risk of being burned if you're not prepared. To navigate a relationship with an Aries, or any dynamic with them, you need to embrace the ebb and flow of their energy. Aries will challenge you, push you, and sometimes leave you wondering where you stand. But if you can understand and accept these traits, rather than take them personally, you can not only survive but thrive in the relationship. One of the most important pieces of advice I can give you is to stay true to yourself. Aries may not always be the best at expressing emotions in ways that align with your needs. But if you keep your own emotional boundaries intact, it will help protect your peace. Be patient with them, but also know when to stand firm on your own values. Your independence matters just as much as theirs. The relationship should not make you feel small, lost, or overlooked. You deserve to feel seen, heard, and appreciated. If you're still healing from a past Aries relationship, it's crucial to focus on yourself. It's easy to get caught up in wondering what went wrong or how things could have been different. But remember, Aries detachment is not your fault. It's just their way of moving through the world. Focus on your own growth, reconnect with your passions, and remember that you are worthy of someone who will cherish you the way you deserve. In the end, Aries relationships are never dull. They will bring challenges, yes, but they will also push you to be your best self. The key is to approach the relationship with a mindset of growth, self-awareness, and mutual respect. Aries can teach you to be bold, to take risks, and to pursue life with a fiery passion. But you also need to know when to step back, when to give them space, and when to protect your own heart. Before we wrap up, I want to remind you, understanding Aries, or any zodiac sign for that matter, is about embracing the lessons they bring. If you're in a relationship with an Aries, or even just navigating Aries energy in your life, remember that it's not all about being broken or left behind. It's about learning how to dance with their fire without getting burned. And hey, if you found this video insightful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share with someone who might be navigating their own relationship with an Aries. Your support helps this channel grow. And I love being able to share this journey of self-discovery and understanding with you all. Let me know in the comments how you've experienced Aries energy in your life, or if you have any personal stories you want to share. Thanks so much for tuning in to Zen Mind Peaceful Life. I'll see you in the next video, where we'll dive deeper into the world of astrology and relationships. Stay strong, stay calm. And remember, you have the power to create your own peace, no matter who you're dealing with.